hello and happy new year. Happy new year, happy 2022. If you made it into this year, no matter how you made it, but if you made it to this new year, congratulate yourself. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And beyond just the new calendar year, I want to say happy entrance to a new season. Because for me, a new year symbolizes a new season. When I'm sharing, I want you to think about a new season, whatever new thing you are experiencing. Some people have relocated from an old place to a new place. Happy new location. Some people have left their jobs and now they are in a new job. I am saying happy new that job. Whatever new thing you are experiencing, I wish you happiness and God's blessing in it. And for today's sharing, I came with actually my board because there's a lesson that I'm learning and I would like us to learn it together. And so, looking at a new year, like I said, I'm going to draw something that I would like us to pay attention to. So we were in 2021, but now we have crossed over to 2022. In between, there is something that I look at as a miracle line. Why? Because not everyone makes it from one year to another. Some people died in this particular thing that is called 2021. And so like I said, for me, a new year symbolizes a new season. You might be, this was an old season, now you are in a new season. You could have been in an old job, but now you are in a new job. You could have been having some old habits, but now, let me write it habits, but now you are a new person. Some people, it could be that you transited from sin, and now you are you have been saved and you are saved. Let me call it salvation. From sinning to salvation. Crossing over the miracle line from the old you to a new you. And when I was thinking about crossing over for this new year, I was meditating upon the common story in the book of Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14 has that story that we always sing about. And Pharaoh and his chariots drowned in the Red Sea and God made a way for his people to walk through. It is a good story because it gives us hope. It makes us know that if you put your trust in God, that he makes a way where there seems to be no way. For the story of Israel and for today's sharing, talking about the new year and the new season, I'll just take us a bit back to the story. If you haven't read those Bible stories, I would encourage you to read them. Please read them. It is good to know what the Bible says. There are always very many lessons to learn in those stories. But you see, before that particular Red Sea moment, Israelites had been in Egypt. And they suffered so much because of their bondage, they cried to the Lord. Have you ever been in a situation that causes you to cry and God himself hears from heaven? Like it is not just your neighbors that are hearing. Heaven itself hears your cry. That must have been a deep, deep, deep cry from their hearts. And so they cried unto the Lord and God sends Moses to deliver them from oppression. And so Moses tries to get them, and before, for a long time, Pharaoh was refusing because the enemy never wants you to go from slavery to freedom. It doesn't come easy. If you ever try to break from an old habit to a new habit, that's when you will know exactly what Pharaoh means. Because the old habit will keep clinging on to you, no matter how much God wants to deliver you. The devil is like, no, I also want them. And so Pharaoh first refused. And then finally, God broke his heart, did so many miracles, and he allowed them to go. If you were in a group of the Israelites that day, like me, I always imagine you would go singing Ebenezer. Who wouldn't sing Ebenezer from the day when God gets you from slavery? I want to write this in black. From slavery to freedom. This was their old, and now this was their new. This was their 2021, this was their 2022. They were singing with a lot of expectations, with all the hopes. Because you see, when you're going into a new season, you don't expect anything to go wrong. Especially when God is leading you, you don't expect anything to go wrong. That is why when you hear prophecies, most people who are prophesying upon the New Year's, it is rare to hear someone say something bad is going to happen. No one, even in 2019, few people actually told us it was going to be a hard year, and then COVID came. People always tell us, and we go with a lot of positive, nice expectations, because when you're crossing over from the old to the new, we always think everything is going to be perfect. And so for the Israelites, they are with Moses. And they've crossed over, they are now free. And then the Bible says, Pharaoh changes his mind. The devil always changes his mind. There will never be a day where the enemy will just throw in his towel and say, oh no, I'll never fight this person. No, he just keeps coming up with new schemes to disappoint, to discourage you, to fight you in your new seasons and in your new phases of life. And so the devil, who is Pharaoh in this case, decides to run after them. And so in verse 10 of Exodus chapter 14, the Israelites look back, and then there is Pharaoh and his chariots, and then they look forward, and there is the Red Sea, and they were greatly afraid. The Bible says they were greatly afraid, and they cried unto the Lord. And they had the reason to be afraid. Why? Because their oppressor, their past is running towards them at a very terrible speed, and yet the future is blood, blood, like this thing of blood, like pictures. They can't see it. They just can't see it. And so they were very afraid. And some of us may be in a new season, but the past is calling you, and you have reached a place where you don't know what you are going to do. Exodus chapter 14, verse 15. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. He told them, he asked him, why are you crying? And God is asking you today, why are you crying? Because now, because of your new season, he said, no, tell them to go forward. Tell them to go forward. And that's my message for today. In the new season that you are in, or the new year that we have stepped in, I want you to have a going forward mentality. Why? The previous chapter, Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, God was concerned about Israel. Why was he concerned about them? The Bible said he did not allow them to go through the shorter route of the Philistines. Why? Because he was concerned that they might face war and they return to Egypt. Meaning they would face war and move backwards. And so he led them through a longer route of the desert. And even the longer route had its own challenges. Why? Because in this life, and in this generation, and even before us, there is never a perfect year. There is never a perfect place. Even if you left your country to another, every place on earth has its challenges. Every season has its challenges. Because as long as we are on earth, the earth is not perfect. Because it is a fallen world. The prince of this world does so many things to make this place imperfect. And so for the Israelites, even when they were in God's perfect will, because you see, you can be in God's perfect will and you still face challenges. They were in God's perfect will. God had decided to deliver them. They were in his perfect will. But even in the midst of that perfect will, the devil was chasing after them. And for some people, when you face a challenge, the first temptation is to think this is not God's will. But you can be in God's perfect will and you still face challenges. You can be in your new season and you still face a challenge. Because every season has its challenges. When you are a slave, and you're not born again, you will have problems of the world. But even in the salvation journey, there will be challenges. And so brace yourself to the mindset of solving problems, because this world will always bring enough problems to you. So do not be the kind of person that runs away from them. Brace yourself, train yourself to be a person who will be ready to solve a problem as it comes. Solve a problem as it comes. Don't be like the Israelites. Because when they cried, when they saw Pharaoh coming, and then there's the Red Sea, their first mindset was, why did we leave the past? Why did we leave the past? Because you see, let me tell you something about the past. This past that we are looking at, especially when we look at it from the old you versus the new you. And like I said, there is this miracle line. And for me, as far as salvation is concerned, this miracle line is Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life. He's the one who will help us transit from the old us to the new us. If you do not cross over and believe him, you will remain a slave in Egypt. You have to take a step of faith and you believe him and you cross over. But like I said, even when you cross over and you go to him, it does not mean that everything is going to be perfect. The things that you ran away from, the sins that you ran away from, the chariots of Pharaoh, these are Pharaoh's chariots, your former sins, your former old habits, your former friends, they will keep running after you, calling you back to themselves. And there is a conflict there. And God was concerned. You see, when God was talking about the Israelites, when you read that statement, why don't I read it? In Exodus chapter 14, he said, God did not lead them, chapter 13, verse 17, God did not lead them by the way of the land of Philistines, although that was near. Why? Because he said, lest perhaps the people change their minds when they see war and they return to Egypt. It was God's concern. That when God was not concerned that when they get to the wilderness, they will lack food, because he knew he was going to supply their food. He was not concerned that they will fall sick, because he was their healer and he was in their midst. He was not concerned about the wild beasts, because he would protect them. What he was concerned about was what he gave them, personal choice and will, their mind. Whether or not their mind will be the kind of mindset that will move forward or backward. He was concerned, and he knew that the Israelites are going to be always tempted to go back to Egypt. And that's why he said, lest they see war and they return back to Egypt. Because like I said, I was going to make an illustration here. I will continue back here in these circles. You see, your past is a familiar place. Egypt, for Israelites of that time, was a familiar place. There is when you live in your old self and you know everything about that place, no matter how bad it is. If you are a drunkard, you know the cheapest bar, you know the place, you know which alcohol, which whatever. If it is an old habit, that is a familiar place. And if anyone told you to go and live in a familiar place, it is very easy. It's like if you tell me to go back to my father's house, oh my God, I know everything. Wherever it is, it's a familiar place. Now, the new you, the new change, the new year 2022 and other years that will come will be unfamiliar. We don't know what lies ahead. Even when you walk away from the old you and you believe Christ and you now have come into a new life, it is unfamiliar. The enemy keeps calling you because he knows you know the other side and you don't know what lies ahead. What keeps us moving is faith and hope that the one who called us, that the God who is leading us through Moses is going to be faithful. And so like I said, God told Moses in Exodus chapter 14 to tell people to move forward. And for me concerning this year, I'm also telling you to move forward. Because you have already moved away from your unfamiliar place, we have crossed over. And just even crossing over, like I said, it's a miracle you should not take for granted, because some people die here. They never leave this place. God has given you the grace and you've crossed over to the new life. What I want to encourage you is forget Egypt. Forget Egypt. Why? If you do not forget the pleasures of the past, if you do not forget the pleasures of sin, the enemy is going to be using it as a bite or as a hook to pull you back. Read the story of Israelites. When they moved forward, even after crossing the Red Sea, they were always, the first thing that would happen when they would face challenges, they want to go back to Egypt. Why? Because they remembered it. And what I don't like about the devil is that when he is reminding you of the past, of the places that you have walked away from, of the situations you've walked away from, of relationships you've walked away from, of jobs you've walked away from, he does not remind you of the terrible things that were happening here. No. Because like I said, each new season has its new challenges. We are on this earth and the prince of the world the devil keeps bringing problems and problems. And so, even when you are in the wilderness, you're going to have challenges. The enemy is putting you back. And so when it gets tough, the enemy starts reminding you where you live. Why did you get saved? You should just go back to your old ways. He does not remind you, because like in Egypt, in Israelites' case, when the devil was reminding them of Egypt, you remember when they missed meat after eating a lot of whatever, and then they started missing meat? The devil reminded them of pots full of meat. Remember there was days how we used to eat meat. He did not remind them how they used to beat their backs for work and oppress them. He did not remind them. And so he was telling them, go back to this place. He's only reminding them of the nice things. Because even in hell, there is like a small light that you can see. Maybe the devil can make you see the light, the color of fire. So you see fire is red. It's a beautiful color. There will always be that nice thing even in hell that can attract you to eat if you're not careful. And those are the things the devil uses as bait to pull us back. For example, you might have left your job because it was standing in the way of your family. And you said, let me quit this job. 2 months down the road, when you start running out of money, the enemy does not remind you of the fights you used to have with your spouse or of how you didn't even know your children. He will remind you of that paycheck and say, why did you leave the job? Maybe you should go back. Some of you left your relationship because it was standing in your way without the Lord, and then the enemy will be like, oh, they used to call you every day. Why did you leave? He always reminds you of the nice things, and he does not remind you of the bad things. Because I'm so sure if the Israelites could remember the bad things of Egypt, they would never have considered going back. They would never have considered going back. Because before you think of going back to the past, remember that Egypt will always be Egypt. The thing that you left, if you left someone because they had bad manners, or because they were not treating you well, or because the job was not paying you well, it is what it is. Egypt will never change. No matter how hard your present is, do not forget the realities that made you walk away from the past. Let me say it today again. No matter how hard your current realities are, they should not make you forget the realities that made you walk away from your past. Let me give you an example. There was a reason why Israelites left Egypt. There was a reason why you left that job. There was a reason why you cried to God for deliverance. You know, the kind of crying which is not heard by your neighbors, which is heard by heaven, and God got you from the place and now you are in a new location. I don't want you to forget that there was a reason why you walked away from the past. There was a reason why you walked away from the other relationship, and you're like, no, there was a reason. Now, I understand, granted, the desert is hard. Granted, there is a Red Sea ahead. Granted, the enemy is calling your name. Granted, your current situation is hard. I'm not refuting that. But I want you to also know that the past that you want to go to is not easy anyway, either. There is a reason why you walked away from the things you walked away from. There is a reason why you walked away from your old habit. There is a reason why you decided to walk away from sin, and you say, the world behind me, the cross before me. Now, no matter how heavy the cross is right now, friends, I want you to know there is a reason why you walked away from it. There is a reason why you woke up in the morning and you lifted up your hands and you said, I want to believe. And I want to encourage you like the way God encouraged the Israelites. Move forward. Remove from yourself the mentality that you can always go back to where you came from. Because if you keep it in yourself, every time you face a challenge, you will not fight. Human beings and animals have the instinct of retreat at the sight of danger. Rarely will you see someone walking into danger when they see it coming. When you watch animals, when a lion is going to hunt a giraffe, and the giraffe tries to fight back, the first thing the lion does is to first take steps backwards. It is like a natural instinct that the enemy uses to make us walk away from our dreams. The first thing that we do when we face a challenge is we want to return back. And that was the very thing that God was concerned about is the Israelites. That they would want to go back to the place he delivered them from because things may become tough. But do not have that mindset, because when you are a kind of person who retreats at the sight of danger, then you will never advance. They always tell us to fight for our dreams. But how will you fight for your dream if the first thing that you do when you get the first punch in your face is to give up and retreat? How will you move forward from one place to another is if every time you smell danger, you take steps backwards? At least do what Moses did. Before God gave Moses instructions, let me get my Bible. Moses first told people, when he didn't know what to do, people were crying to him, saying, what are we going to do? Why did you bring us here to die? Moses first told them, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Stand still. So instead of taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards, at least you would rather stand still. First stand still and then see the salvation of the Lord. And when you pray and you wait on God, he will tell you to move forward. He will tell you go forward. Why? Because the Lord who guided you all this far from here to here, he is faithful. He will tell you to go forward. But if you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards, you will never advance in life. And so, what I'm trying to say to us today is that this year and in the new season that you are in, no matter how challenging it gets, move forward. Do not think about going back to the past. Isaiah 43 verse 18 says, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the things of the past. Behold, I do a new thing. Meaning, no matter how beautiful the past is, do not go back to it. Behold, God is doing a new thing. There is power in forgetting the past, especially if you forget the pleasures of the past. If you want to be successful in life, and if you want to be a person who advances, you have to be a person who moves forward. In 2022, move forward. In your new job, move forward. In your new relationship, move forward. Do not keep going back and forth, because you will never advance. This line that I call the miracle line is a line that we are grateful for. I put down here and I say, this is Christ himself. I want to encourage anyone who is still here on the old you to cross over. If you are still here, you're going to die there. There is no way the enemy is going to be too nice to you at one point in your life. If you're still in your old job, in your old habits, in your old sins, I want you to cross over by faith. Come to the Lord. Let Christ, this one who is the way, the truth, and the life, help you cross over to a new life. And like I said, when you cross over to his new life, it doesn't guarantee that everything is going to be perfect, but he is going to make a way. The story of the Israelites at the Red Sea, when God told Moses to hit the Red Sea with the rock, he hit with the rod, he hit the Red Sea, and the Red Sea parted, and God made a way for them. They were in his perfect will. When you are in God's perfect will, no matter how challenging this world becomes, he will always put escape routes for you. And he will cause your enemies to drown in the very things that they thought would drown you. The very Red Sea, which the Egyptians were waiting for it to swallow the Israelites, ended up swallowing them instead. The thing that thought we were going to get finished will be finished instead because God is going to go before you and be your rear guard. But what are you going to do? Move forward. Move forward. And no matter how tough your present situation is, do not go back. You can't go back to yesterday just because today is hard. It is not a good thing. You can't go back because today is hard and then you forget that yesterday was not easy itself. Egypt is going to be Egypt. Even if you went back to your old place, whatever caused you to leave will cause you to leave. And the problem is, if you go back to Egypt, it may be too late. By the time you come, you find the Red Sea has already closed itself and there is no more grace for you. So you might say, oh, let me go back to the world and backslide. But the very things that caused you to leave Egypt at one point in life will cause you to want to leave again. That is something you should never forget. My encouragement to you is this: move forward. I am re-echoing Moses' words, which God told him to tell the Israelites. Move forward, because when you take a step forward, you will find grace right in front of you, because God goes before you to make ways where there is no way. And so once again, in your new season, in your new year, whatever it is new that you are going through, I wish you only happiness. And I pray, it is my prayer, that you move forward and God will bless you.